Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about Hero Academia Chapter 306. I almost forgot what I was gonna say. Hey, I hope you all are doing well. This is gonna be a fun chapter. I got 5 pages of notes. It's quite a lot. I don't know how long this is gonna run, so we're gonna get right into it. I've got a lot of general notes. The general notes cover pretty much 2 pages, and then after that, it's the page-by-page walkthrough. There's a lot of detail in the chapter. There's a lot of little things here. Let's get into it. So, first thing to talk about is the name of the chapter itself. It is called The Final Act Begins. So, are we surprised that we are going into the final act of Hero Academia? No, we should not be surprised. There were already many hints with the author flat out saying that we were going towards the last phase or something like that. If you want me to talk about more about the hints, if you recall, back when Medio showed up, I pointed out that the author was going through a lot of his saved up plot points, which might have indicated that we were getting closer to the end because of how the plot points were being used up. The hope would have been that he would have countered by creating more plot points, but that's not really happening as quickly as we're going through it. So we got the plot point angle. If you also remember, the author thought the second movie was going to be the final movie. What that says is that he just didn't think Hero Academia would be running long enough for them to justify a third movie. So that also said that Hero Academia was going to be relatively short. And of course, I think we had comments from the author talking about we're going into this phase here. In terms of the final act begins, I also want to say, with this being the final act, the author has a loose 3-act structure. The 3-act structure is very common in storytelling. So the 3 acts in this case, and you might recognize it when I say early Hero Academia, current Hero Academia, or now even more current Hero Academia. The 3 phases would have been pre-Camino, post-Camino, and post-war. So those are the 3 acts that we got in Hero Academia. When you look at the way that that is structured, since the prison break happens at the end of Act 2, transition into Act 3, because of the 3-act structure, I believe it is likely that the attack of UA would be the third act climax. It depends, because he can play around with this. Third act climax can either take place in the city or it's going to be at UA. Depends on how he's feeling on this one in particular. But yeah, overall, in terms of it being the final act, that should not be surprising. I will tell you, if this is the final act, we would be going up to chapter 500. I'm still expecting at least 2 years of Hero Academia, because this thing isn't going to end in 50 chapters. It's not going to. It could end in 100 chapters, but let's say, yeah, I'd expect 2 years of Hero Academia, which would be like roughly 100 chapters. So I'd say I expect like 4 years of Hero Academia, even with the final act. Still, I think it's safe to expect 4 years. What that does say, however, is that Hero Academia will end roughly somewhere around when One Piece is ending, which is going to be a bigger thing for Shonen Jump if those numbers are correct. I sincerely doubt we get 6 years of Hero Academia, however. If you want to know, traditionally the second act is the longest act when it comes to writing, but this doesn't really work very well when it comes to a manga, because mangas have different stipulations with their development. Anyway, that was the chat about the final act begins. Not really that big of a surprise personally. Next, I want to talk about Ochako. I want to talk about her because some things that are happening in the chapter, they have my concern, and to some degree leave a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, because I feel bad for Ochako. I don't think that the author is about to treat her very well here. So I want to speak on that because, as you know, this is a plot point for Ochako that I like to harp on. So what I'm going to do here, this is kind of going to be a bigger discussion, kind of stepping out of the series and talking about the meta perspective, and also talking about the details within the series. So I think fundamentally what you have to understand is that Ochako is an amazing character. From the perspective of a coming-of-age story, she's especially great. She's the most realistic character in Hero Academia when it comes to her personal growth. And as a teenager in her second year of high school, she is justified to be where she is in life. She's also very justified, given that she is a civilian who only recently became a hero, like quite literally in the last year. Yes, we've been with Ochako for 6 years. That's true, but it's only been a year for her. Now, the problem is, however, that she is in My Hero Academia, surrounded by extraordinary people, and further, the author keeps putting her in weird spots and has her doing insane things like admitting her love life problems to a murderer who might have just finished murdering a senior during their fight. In this chapter, Ochako revisits her personal rhetoric. Her having that rhetoric is fine, but the author screws her over in the way that he makes her bring it up. Let me give you the full context of the question. But if you define a hero as someone willing to suffer in silence, then who's there for them when they're in pain? And I do believe that is a continuous narration. I think that the way that the author premised that, the reason it's in a narration box is then goes into inner thoughts, I think is because he was trying to reveal that Ochako was a narrator. So I think that's a full thought from her. Point is, she's re-evoking the who's there for them when they're in pain. Okay, now look at this. Oh man, wow, Endeavor's crying. Wow, he is really hurt both physically and mentally. I'm gonna be Ochako right now. Oh no, who's there for Endeavor when he's hurt? Oh, well, look at this. Endeavor's in trouble. Hawks is going to be there. Hawks is coming in for the save. Oh wait, look at this. The whole family, even in a hard situation, even Ray, who was legitimately mentally fragile, came out, showed up when their family was at its darkest moment. Even Natsu decided to make a truce. Even Shoto allowed Endeavor a moment to cry and came to pick him up. When Endeavor had to face the press, he wasn't alone. Best Jeanist and Hawks stood right there with him. So, who's there for them when they're in pain? Co-workers that understand the situation, family, people that care, friends, people that want to be your friend, people that care. In this situation, we just got out of an arc that was essentially dedicated to answering Ochako's question. Mind you, Ochako is stunted. She has no reason to know the answers to this particular question. She's just a child. And the reason I bring that up is just because some readers like to blame Ochako for not being better with Toga, saying that Toga was giving a cry for help and it was wrong of Ochako, or Ochako was in the wrong for not understanding that. It's like, guy, her character, she's figuring these things out. She doesn't know any better just yet. She doesn't have the experience to know what to do. All that said though, Ochako is stunted. She's legitimately justified not knowing the answer to the question, and that's why this is a narrative problem and not Ochako's fault. What the author did was that he showed all the ways that this question is answered, and he answered that question without ever asking the question. At no point did any other hero in Crisis utter the question that Ochako is uttering, because it's a dumb question for an adult hero to have. And I make the stipulation adult hero because really, when you think about it, regular adults in Hero Academia actually probably have it's never occurred to them to have this question. Civilians have most likely never even bothered to think of that question, and that's why Ochako has the question, because she's still transitioning from civilian to hero. Anyway, when it comes to the adult heroes, he just shows it happening naturally because it is a natural thing. He showed it, and then other characters answer the question so naturally, he comes back to Ochako and puts her back at the end of the line. And that's a problem. When there is so much progress everywhere else, you can't just take us back to the beginning of the problem again and make it seem like it's a big deal when we fully know that this problem is so small that every other major character solves it without even acknowledging it as a problem. But unfortunately, he does this to Ochako. And the effect of this is what we've already seen. During the war, Ochako was worried about her friends. She looked back. Fans hoped that she was going to go after them. Did that happen? No. Ida was the one that went back. And that's the issue. The whole world of Hero Academia is moving forward past Ochako, and she's still stuck on this problem from the Class 1A, Class 1B fight. What the war says is that when Ochako stagnates, another character rises past her, and in that case, it was Ida. And when you have progress versus stagnation, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what the casual audience is more likely to like in general. Why should people care about someone that can't keep up with the rest of the story? This brings me to the conclusions. This is all happening because of the way that the author tries to keep Ochako away from the events that actually matter. It's like he puts her in her own little bubble, so that she can do stuff while not interfering with the main points. And because of that, it's very likely that Ochako is going to be screwed over again. As far as I'm concerned, when Izuku opted to go after Bakugo and Kamino, it was Shoto, Ida, Kirishima, and Momo who went after him. Ochako told him not to go. The author had to give her a saving grace there and have her say something that was critical for saving Bakugo, but that was because he was trying to salvage that girl from not looking that great. During the war, when Bakugo and Izuku ran off, it was Shoto and Ida who went after them. I don't see Bakugo, Shoto, or Ida in these shots. I wouldn't be surprised if those three are the first to find Izuku if they were to go after him. And if the author is to have them do that, the read is going to be, oh, while Ochako was busy angsting, these guys actually did something about it. Like always. These guys that I just pointed out, they don't care that Izuku's a hero. They don't see Izuku as a hero. They see Izuku as a friend. These guys are not Ochako. And that's what I'm concerned about. If the author were to do that, Ochako wouldn't look good in comparison to the people that she's supposed to be standing next to because she's the main female character. And you know, maybe in the future, Ochako makes a bunch of hardcore hero help services. It's like, whoop-de-doo. I don't care about what she does in the epilogue. Anyone can do anything in the epilogue. Aoyama could be a top 10 hero in the epilogue. I want to see her being cool over the course of the story that matters. But right now, with the author's abilities, this part of Ochako's storyline to me feels like it's going to be a relative dead end. The best we can hope for is that Ochako is part of some kind of solution here and is actually going to have a conversation that matters with Izuku, that's meaningful and actually talks about Izuku's feeling instead of being something that's just like an overview saying like, yeah, we build each other up, buddy. But really, think about that. Do you think do you as readers think that we're going to get a deep, fulfilling conversation between Ochako and Izuku? Consider, the author seems to think that the only people that should get meaningful dialogues are the Todorokis, Izuku, Bakugo, Hawks, and All Might. And then imagine a scenario where a teacher dies, the kids go through a war, and we don't get to see them talk and process it. Look at the way that the author treats these characters during their darkest moments. Do you think it's likely that he'll slow down and give Ochako meaningful dialogue to snap Izuku back to his senses? When we haven't even seen Izuku talk to his mom just yet. His mom wasn't at the hospital. Not even a little like image to just show her being there. No. At this point, be real with the probabilities. Bakugo and Ida are the most likely to give him that talk because the author is much more comfortable with having Bakugo berate Izuku and having Ida get to the heart of the problem. Legitimately, Ochako might get something, but when she gets it, it will most likely be because he's playing into the fact that she's the main character and needs to get something. And if that were to happen, I feel like with 90% certainty, it wouldn't be something that would be of high quality, not with the author's particular track record in this regard. Another thing, for this to be valuable, we need to have a unique payoff that we haven't seen with the other people who have answered this question by just living their lives. And that's where the tough aspect's going to be, because the one time that the author did answer this question with Ochako, it was during the Class 1A 1B fight when he had her going in there to save Izuku. That was like her big, like, heroic moment that was linked to this rhetoric. But this is why it's also a dead end. What's so special about a hero saving another hero? When Aizawa was about to be mauled by Shigaraki, Shoto's the one that came in there and saved him. They do it all the time. That's why for this kind of thing, Ochako needs that emotional dialogue. And that's where the concerns start, because Horikoshi hasn't really shown that he's willing to give emotional dialogues to people that aren't the people I mentioned earlier. Now, speaking from the narrative perspective of this situation, what you have here, I think, is an example of maybe what not to do. I don't think it's a good move to have someone who's not the main character be so stuck behind the rest of the world, especially with other people in her age group excelling while she's being stuck on a question that it doesn't even occur to them to have, while they answer it just by being good people. I don't think that works, because what you end up having is you have a forward momentum for the rest of the story, but then you have to stop that and come back to deal with this side character. It just kind of slows down the story. Now, in a tragedy, a character being behind the times of the world and being behind every other character, if they were the main character, you can make an interesting tragedy about that. But My Hero Academia isn't a tragedy. It doesn't work here, and Ochako's not the main character. Heck, Ochako barely gets that many scenes nowadays, right? So that's why this is just unfortunate. Ultimately, when you see her saying this, the way that you see her in this chapter, that's just saying that she's pretty much not going to be useful for the next little bit. Because that question, instead of representing her heroic identity, it is right now more likely to represent the symbol of inaction. That question is essentially Ochako's symbol of stagnation. Now again, mind you, she's the main female character. The author's going to come up with something to... the author will come up with something to satisfy this question, but unless he can make it something more special than what we've seen from other characters, in what way does Ochako stand out from everyone else? Now, in terms of the consequences of doing this, are there consequences to treating Ochako like this? Well, that's the tricky thing. Ochako will always be a character that's interesting to talk about because of how her character development went. And that's what makes this situation kind of hard, because again, on paper, she's pretty solid as a character. But ultimately, the question of the consequences, it all comes down to whether or not you can distinguish the difference between Ochako having this rhetoric and Ochako revisiting the rhetoric right now, right? That's where the distinction is. The issue here ultimately is where she is placed. Because if we come into a situation where before her, immediately, everyone's answering the question, and then after her, Ida, Bakugo, and Shoto, for example, answer the question without ever asking that question, it's going to make her look really bad. How does this manifest over the course of the fan base? Well, quite simply, the issue is Ochako's not going to be memorable, so what it's going to lead to is that maybe people are just going to say that, oh yeah, you know, she was just kind of there, they didn't really do much, she kind of helped Toga, but she was never really a part of the main plot or something like that. It'll ultimately be a position that will downplay Ochako, but then on the flip side, because she was written in a very solid way, you'll still have people defending her. What this ultimately, I guess the big consequence of doing this, and let's say going for the worst case scenario, is just flatly Ochako will have limited screen time. When compared to Izuku, Bakugo, Ida, and Shoto, her screen time will be near insignificant. And that is unfortunate considering that she is the main female character. That would be the consequence of that situation. Anyway, I talked quite a bit here, but that was important. This is a really big distinguishing moment for Ochako, and this leads us into the next conversation. Will people actually go after Izuku? Dependent on who goes after Izuku here, Ochako is either salvaged, or she is like, or the author has done something really mean to her. It all depends. The worst case for Ochako here is if Ida, in particular, goes after Izuku immediately. Bakugo, I think, is almost guaranteed to try and go find Izuku. But if Ida goes, that's where the big issue is. Because Ida is the one that's most comparable to her in that he has less significance than her in the overall story. So to answer that question, will people go after Izuku? Well, do we have any precedent in Shonen Jump that tells us how they deal with this? We have two minor examples. Right now, they showed us what they did when a character's on the runaway. He is running with a second person, and very quickly someone goes after him from the main cast. So that was... then we have another example from D. Greyman. Now, mind you, D. Greyman is still under the Shueisha umbrella. It was in Shonen Jump a long time ago, but it got moved to another department because of the author's legal issues and medical issues. But D. Greyman also has a runaway arc. And in that particular runaway arc, guess what? Allies that we know and love follow the main character around. Thinking that Izuku will not be pursued by the other popular side characters is a little bit naive. It'd be nice if the author surprises us, but I don't think he will. I think he's pretty locked in. So right now, what I'm betting on is within the next 3 chapters, Bakugo, Ida, and Shoto are going to be pursuing Izuku, if not already meeting up with Izuku. That is my prediction. and I don't think anyone else is going to come. In regards to Kirishima, I don't think Kirishima is going to show up because right now it looks like the author wants to keep Kirishima locked to Mina and Momo. I don't know why, but we'll have to see. Best case scenario for Ochako is that she's part of the search party and she actually gets to have some words with him. Again, what we need to be hoping for Ochako here is that she gets the opportunity to actually have a conversation that matters with Izuku and isn't a person that's just shoved off to the side. Just looking at the letter that that Izuku wrote Ochako right now, it looks like it's a pretty generic letter. Like nothing about that letter seems to say anything that's unique about Ochako and Izuku's relationship. Okay, so we're pretty deep in the video. Let's go into the page-by-page walkthrough, starting with the color page. So on this color page, we have Shigaraki and Izuku. Beautiful stuff. This was the color page that showed us that Izuku was going to be wearing the orange cape. We've seen Izuku in orange before, so that wasn't that big of a surprise, but we do see that Izuku was wearing a backpack, right? Cool stuff. So interesting thing here is the way that they're holding the screens. Izuku is holding the screen, not really anything indicative of a bad intent. Shigaraki is holding the All Might screen, and that's very indicative of a bad intent. And then you can also see that Shigaraki still has damaged fingers. So what do we really take away from this? This might just be, you know, Horikoshi showing the targets. Izuku's aiming for All for One, and Shigaraki wants to kill All Might. One thing I do want to point out here, or one thing I want to mention, is that people keep saying that Izuku has a scar on his face. I'm going to zoom in real close so you can look at his face. I don't think he's got any scarring, but just keep that in mind. People were saying that. Alright, page 3. All Might confirms that he has feelings coming through. And I want to say, technically, you know, from our standards, real world standards, All Might has a superpower. Like, he's technically in two places at once with a consciousness split, and he's receiving information from a distance, right? That's essentially a superpower. Yeah, it's like a low-end superpower, but in any other setting, that would be a superpower. It's a superpower. It's a psychic connection. It's a superpower. It's just kind of neat. It's cool that he has it. But I'm just playing with technicalities. Page 4, love this page. All Might, you can see him wiping a tear away. If you recall last time, I was hoping that, you know, Izuku would wake up and that's when we would see the tear, but Horikoshi did a slightly different thing here, but we still get to see the actual tear form, but not form, we got to see him wipe it away. On this page, we get confirmation it was just randoms who said this stuff about One for All. That was important because people were thinking that it was going to be a relevant character that had screwed someone over, but it's more likely it's just randoms. So I'm glad that we got the simplest solution for that one. On page 4, we also see the kids running into the room to check on Izuku. Page 5, Hawk says that they're up against society. I do respect that the author just flat out made society an antagonist here. Not a villain, an antagonist. Critical line here is All Might, the ones who won't give up. What All Might is saying is that these two are two of the filtered heroes and that they are worth trusting. And they have proven it by standing strong even now. Page 6 is the setup for the relocation plan. Now, the critical line is the request from an alumnus. Who is the alumnus? Is it Endeavor or is it someone in the government? If it's someone in the government, we might get a new hero reveal because they're alumnus, or they might be from the general course or something like that, I don't know. Or if it's Endeavor, then it justifies, like he's just calling it. I really hope it's someone from the government. It feels like it's someone from the government, but the wording is kind of tricky on this one. Page 7 touches on something that we've talked about before, and that is that a good chunk of the public is crying out for help. In this case, it tells us people want to know that everything will be okay, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable interpretation. I think that's perfectly fine to say people want to be okay, people want to go back to normal. No one wants to live in the world that the villains want to create. Anyway, page 7 sets up what people want, and then page 8 shows Endeavor not giving people that, instead opting to give them the cold, hard truth for some things. Reporters were even shocked that he admitted it. Page 9 shows a shut-in. Yeah, one of the easiest ways to know that an opinion isn't going to hold is to have a shut-in saying it. Anyway, there's a close-up of that one boy's shirt, the one that says look at him or whatever. So this was just visual reinforcement that people were still believing in Endeavor. And then we go into details about Hawks. He apologizes about concealing stuff about his dad, but as we know, that was the government's call, and honestly, the public isn't good with this kind of info anyway, but that's a personal opinion. I don't think he needed to apologize for where he came from. The apology for attacking a fleeing villain, you know, reasonable, but really, this wasn't just a fleeing villain. You were in a war zone. A fleeing villain isn't necessarily a repentant villain. It's a tactical retreat, which is why I was happy that on page 10, Hawks told everyone that Twice was dangerous and unrepentant. Anyway, Page 10 is that reporter. I just want to say, I thought this was a really good panel of her. So page 11 is the start of something cool here. The woman was lashing out. The way the author started this was by having the woman appeal to emotion with the mother being wounded. She set herself up immediately as a victim of the hero's actions. Then she progresses into highlighting that people are suffering and the heroes aren't hurting enough in their apology. I'm going to skip the middle panel for a second and go to the bottom panels. Lady's upset that the heroes aren't in pain enough over their mistakes. To which Endeavor asks, well, if we showed you how hurt and tired we are, does that make it better? And she yells no, saying that they need to put the society at ease. So what happened here is that Endeavor walked her into saying that they should be doing what they were already doing slightly. And I think that's why the pause happened. That's why she says, ah. And that's how Endeavor breaks her tirade and is able to move her into the real solution. So Endeavor breaks the circular logic and he gets her to drop all the rhetoric and just gets her to flat out say, we gotta take down the villains. So overall, with the little ad that the woman had, this was just indicative of Endeavor controlling that conversation. And I think he did it really well. Props on the author for that one. Now, the middle panel had her speaking that the villains are to blame, but the heroes are the cause. As we know, it's not just the heroes, but the society that relies on them that are the root of this, along with All for One. But it's just unfortunate that the heroes are still being blamed. The one thing that comes out here is that the heroes right now seem to be covering for the Public Safety Commission. Because it is not just on the heroes for sure that this went down the way it did. Page 12 is a ridiculous shot of Best Jeanist and him setting up the evacuation zones. Critical line here is Endeavor's line of taking out villains is how Endeavor can atone. That's a critical line because the author might be setting up a line where Endeavor says that he, as a father, has to atone in a different way. This line makes the separation between Endeavor the hero and Endeavor the father. Page 13, critical page 2, we finally get to see Inko finally puts that theory in the ground. We also see her with Bakugo's mom. Apparently this confirms that they know each other, and it's like Izuku was this kid's best friend. They were in preschool together. They went to the same schools their whole life. I can almost guarantee that these people knew each other from before. Come on, be realistic. And you might say, well, how come like Inko didn't step in to stop the bullying? Yeah, no, Izuku didn't tell anyone about the bullying. Izuku's a Stockholm Syndrome guy. Man, like, nah. Them talking is not that strange. One thing to point out here is how we are not canceling Hero School. They've all doubled down on the value of Hero School by going there for shelter. It's just funny how that works out for a lot of people that were saying that this was not going to work out that way. No one's brought up anything about bringing kids into a war zone. Anyway, Endeavor says a bunch of cool things on this page. First, that this is being done so that they can find a solution. I'm a fan of that. Like, I really like that rhetoric. I think that's what heroes do for society. They're there to help society while society finds better ways forward. And then Endeavor tells everyone to give him the blame. So this is the rallying cry that I was kind of hoping about for like the past few weeks. Something that Endeavor could do to reignite some heroes. And you know, he did pull it off to a degree. Now, what I want to look forward to is whether or not he can bring a few of the retired heroes back into the fray here. But I do like how he stood up there, and he's going to take on all the criticism that people are giving the other heroes. Page 14 is the rallying cry proper. Page 15 is how we know that someone was inspired because Wash has a tear in his eye, watching most likely the live stream on his phone. Anyway, this page is interesting. First, the heroes that are shown: Mount Lady, Wash, Mirko. She looks like she has a prosthetic on. Kamui Woods. My question is, where's Ryukyu? What are you trying to say about the woman that did so much in trying to stop Shigaraki? Did she retire, or did the author forget her? I'm not happy that she's not here. If he forgot her, not happy. On this page, we also see Dobby, and he's playing it cool because that's all he really can ever do. But look, believe me, on the inside, he is fuming. And finally, the whole thing about heroes vanishing. I roll my eyes at this. This is in reference to the line about heroes vanishing from the city. I don't remember if you remember how my reactions to that. My reaction is like, yeah, sure, Horikoshi. I don't believe you. I don't ever believe this guy when he has narration. But, you know, in this case, what the author is doing is he's playing with the word to try and justify that, oh, yeah, no, that was really true. If your definition of hero is this, my definition of hero is not that. Aizawa, for instance, isn't someone people might look up to. Heroes aren't idols. If you think heroes are idols, you're part of the problem. Heroes are people who are licensed to use their quirk in public in the service of justice. That's the actual definition of a hero in Hero Academia when you strip away the sensational emotion from it. Page 16 is the page that reveals, or it reveals by implication that Ochako is the one narrating the chapter. On this page, we learn Endeavor covered up Izuku and All Might, and that Izuku was at the dorms at some point. Now note, it's likely it's likely that page 16 and 17 take place in April because of the way narration works. Page 17, I already attacked this page. I will add that I think Ochako's sort of right to feel that Izuku's a dummy because he's running away from the support systems that could help him. But yeah, at the same time, this is kind of a bigger issue than a stunted teenager's mind can properly comprehend. I mean, Izuku has like the voices of 8 other peoples in his head right now, and he's being chased by a supervillain that engineered one of the biggest disasters in the history of the world. You could kind of understand how a teenager could be overwhelmed by that. One thing I will say is like, everyone else just kind of gets a letter, and Ochako's part of that. Again, just really reminding us that Ochako is like the background characters. I'm really excited to see whether or not Ida, Bakugo, and Shoto are also in this little group and don't do anything about it in the same way that the others will. Because that's really Ochako here again is salvaged by how Ochako here will be salvaged or saved by how not competent, like by how much lack of initiative the other characters show. I think that's the best way to say that. And then we go to page 18 and 19. First, let me remind you of the timeline. The war happened at the end of March. By definition, it can't have been more than 30 days between the war and Izuku's shot posing here, right? Okay? Just remember that, okay? Really, remember that. Because I do know some people are getting mixed up with the timeline. Anyway, on the page 18 and 19, there's a lot of things happening here. First, a bookend. This is a bookend. It's really cool when you get bookends. This is the first page of Hero Academia. See the dialogue? Now, second note is about the meaning of the page. Note the bags under Izuku's eyes. They point to disillusionment and most likely exhaustion. First, on disillusionment, remember, Hero Academia starts with Izuku uttering that line while being excited. Back then, villains were like a sideshow attraction that everyone would come by and watch and see like, oh, look at those kooky villains. Now it's real. And I would like to say, in terms of why Izuku might be like really affected here, recall, Danger Sense might be feeding Izuku images of people in trouble into his mind. If he's getting a constant feed of that, if Danger Sense's upgrades are actually that, then you could understand why Izuku's going to be disillusioned. Third thing to talk about, the location. Now, people were thinking that this could be America because of the gargoyle that Izuku's standing on. I think that's very unrealistic. Let me show you a little trick here. I want to show you something from chapter, I have it here, 246. I want to show you this little dialogue here. Let's hope that the next time the cherry blossoms fall, we will all be smiling. The cherry blossoms fall in April. Look at this here. Those are cherry blossoms. I don't know what they're doing that high, but those are cherry blossoms. I would also say there's no way this is America because America would not be this destroyed. This is Hero Academia Society. This is Japan. Those are my reasons for saying it's Japan. I don't think he's in the States. Fourth thing, Gran Torino's cape. This is interesting because the author actually had a lingering shot on Gran Torino's cape earlier in the chapters when Gran Torino was in the hospital. That cape, it makes me kind of think that maybe Izuku did tell Gran Torino he was leaving, because there has to be at some point where Izuku collects the cape. Gran Torino might have also fully retired. I mean, like, Izuku had to tell Gran Torino hi, so maybe that's where he gets the cape as a parting gift. I think it's really cool that Gran Torino influenced Izuku so much. Like, that's really neat. Fifth thing, Izuku's arms. On the live stream, people were thinking, what's going on with Izuku's arms? Aren't they supposed to be destroyed? 2 words. Central Hospital. Or, third word, Eri, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, we're quite literally in a stage of Hero Academia where it quite literally doesn't matter what kind of wounds people have because everything's going to get fixed to be able to work for the final stage of Hero Academia. Yeah, look, man. If we don't know what's going on with the arms. There might be some kind of tricks going on here. Like, he might still be hurt or something like that. But if it comes out in the next few weeks that Central Hospital fixed Izuku's arms or Eri fixed Izuku's arms, welcome to the wonderful world of plot devices. What can you really say? It might also be cool if he has like a low acting regen quirk. Because like, actually, it wouldn't be that strange to think that he has a low acting regen quirk. The reason I say that is because on paper, for a man to be able to go from being skeletal to being 100% buff, that's kind of weird. I know All Might always says he's flexing, but flexing doesn't do that. Flexing doesn't change your facial structure. No, if we were to give like a quick theory onto why this could work, you could very easily say that Izuku broken arms might be his normal form now. and then his flexing form could be Izuku with repaired arms. That wouldn't be that hard to say because of how weird the stuff with All Might is. But again, there's so many plot devices at play right now that could legitimately justify the situation we're seeing here with Izuku. Sixth point is that Izuku's putting on the mask. That says that him putting on the mask implies that he's about to jump in and go take down the giant villain. Who is the giant villain? Some people are hoping muscular, but it might not be. It might be a regular. Next week, what will happen? Will Ida, Bakugo, and Shoto show up to help Izuku fight the giant villain? Maybe. They might be tracking him right now. But yeah, no, that's the chapter of Hero Academia 306. Yeah, good stuff. Right now, my attention is on Ochako. I want to see how the author's going to handle her. And I'm kind of hoping that next week we get to see more stuff. I didn't talk about this at the beginning, but the quirks. We didn't get to see the quirks in this chapter, and I do have a point about that. First, I want to say that my initial idea was that we were only going to get 2 chapters of One for All World or Vestige World, and we actually ended up doing that. When you look at my original prediction, I was thinking that we were gonna get a image of the third user and maybe the second if we got lucky, and then we'd go back to the real world. And while that's not what happened to Izuku, that's what we ended up seeing. So that's unfortunate. I'm not a fan of this. We're supposed to be seeing this story from Izuku's perspective, but this time it's Ochako narrating. Don't even get me started on like just the wonkiness of the narrations. This has been a problem with Hero Academia for a long time. I'm not going to care about it. But I wish that he didn't so artificially add suspense. What's probably going to happen is that each quirk is going to be properly explained in an arc. And only one quirk is going to be properly explained in an arc. What I mean by that is that you got to look at the example. Black Whip comes out in Class 1A versus 1B, right? Nana's quirk, you find out about it earlier. Nana's quirk comes out fully in the war. In the war, you also have Danger Sense coming out, but Danger Sense only gets properly explained in the Fallout arc, that being the recovery arc that let's call it the Central Hospital arc, right? That's where Danger Sense comes out properly. So what that is saying is that when it comes to at least the explanations for the quirk, I think it's likely that the quirks get properly explained an arc each. The reason I bring that up is because that gives us an idea of how many arcs are left. But it's also very likely that the author just goes into a flashback next week and tells us everything that justifies why Izuku ran away, right? Right now the big question is, Izuku, why did you run? What's going on? Is Gran Torino dead? So we kind of have to answer those questions. I'm just trying to give you an idea of how this structure might go. If we're looking at the quirks explanation counting as arcs, then we have 3 missing quirks, so 3 more arcs would be how that would go. It's just again, it's just a tool to help us make a prediction. Anyway, let's put some conclusive predictions down here. I predict within the next 3 chapters, Ida, Bakugo, and Shoto will be there. That's my most cynical prediction. My happiest prediction would be that more of the class shows up to find Izuku. My unlikely, like what I think is most unlikely, is that Izuku stays alone for this entire portion. That's just strange to me. If Horikoshi did that, count me surprised. Next, I think All Might probably already knows that Izuku's gone. I think Gran Torino knows that Izuku's gone as well. I legitimately see that. Any other things? In terms of future plot lines, we still have quite a lot. We have Shoji's plot line that we know we have to get. We need a follow-up for Shinzo. We need, of course, the quirks to be revealed. Any other plot lines? We need to get Toga's plot line, but Toga's pretty much going to be here to save Shigaraki. That's what Toga's going to be for the rest of the story. She's going to be a saving force. Any other things that we got going on? I can't really remember right now, but there's other little plot lines, I'm pretty sure. It's just I don't have a list of them right now. But we still have a few plot lines to pad out. The traitor. Traitor might be Shoji as well. Oh, and of course, Izuku's dad. We still haven't seen Izuku's dad. I really hope All for One isn't Izuku's dad, because that's going to be lame. Anyway, yeah. So that's the plot lines we still have. In terms of other predictions, here's my last prediction, and this is pretty big. Hero Academia is pretty much done. I don't think we're ever going to go back to classes. Like, we might go back to classes at the end of the manga to show that the world went back to normal, but the actual seeing the curriculum of the kids is done. I think Horikoshi has fallen victim to the same thing that happens to every other high school shonen. That being, he showed off everything that the school was capable of in the first year, and now he has nothing left to show. And now we get to, it's just like in Shonen Jump, the high school structure never gets shown to completion. And this is actually one of those points that makes me think that, yeah, I think I'm better off betting on my cynical interpretations than I am being hopeful for Hero Academia from this point on. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below, and until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.